I think right now we are 3 years away from a total collapse of the dollar. So many countries are struggling to provide the necessity for a fruitful life. Coin is the perfect representation of human potential energy. You can create policy, but the policy doesn't stop the human action from happening. If you ask me what is the moral case for Bitcoin, I would say it is to solve world hunger.
You are my, I think, third guest today that chose to be anonymous, and it's really cool because I think it's an act of serving Bitcoin community, because without getting yourself the credit. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people want to be in the podcast. I even get now messages, oh, hey, I want to be in the podcast and I want to promote that and that. And you chose the completely other direction. You don't want to promote anything. You don't want to promote yourself. You just want to share knowledge about Bitcoin. And I think this is a really noble thing to do. But before we get into the Bitcoin stuff, I want to know, like, why did you personally chose to be anonymous and private?
For me, it was considering just the objective that we all have in Bitcoin is to promote Bitcoin, and I'm not here to promote myself. I'm dedicated to Bitcoin because what it has convinced me of through studying it, and however good I look and how appealing I can be to a crowd is just a side case to this, and I think it's distracting, yeah.
Is there also a security reason for it, or is it just that?
Yes. So I think it is unwise to, if you're really into Bitcoin like me. I think in the end it may be more prudent to stay anonymous so that you can or pseudonymous to make sure that you're not that easily found. And I think that with Bitcoin, the biggest threat to Bitcoin is a social threat, not a technical threat, because it's proving to be technically sound all this time. And I think in the near future, we're going to see that people are lashing out towards Bitcoiners because Bitcoiners are doing better than other people. Same thing happened after the Weimar Republic, the Papiermark collapsed. Germans started lashing out to the Jewish community, where people had been more conservative with their money and were able to divest right before everything went wrong with the currency. They didn't save, they invested. And a social reaction to this out of jealousy and spite is expectable, I think.
Yeah, I think it's also like a danger. And we actually covered that on the podcast a few episodes back, like 10 episodes back or something like that, that it can be dangerous for Bitcoiners. It can be also dangerous for society if fiat is collapsing too fast and Bitcoin is rising up too fast, because then people don't have the time to slowly get into the better store of value, the sinking ship analysis. If you have a sinking ship, you want it to sink as slow as possible, so people have the time to get rescued with Bitcoin. So this would be like, and I think the more the slower we get into that, it's the more peaceful it could be. But there's also people like, I think Knut Svanholm says it, that fiat is so bad, we have to make the transition as fast as possible. What do you think is like, do you think it can be dangerous if Bitcoin is too fast, too successful?
I used to think that Bitcoin was moving too quickly, but I don't anymore. I think the sinking ship analogy is isn't correct. I think most people earn their wages paycheck to paycheck at this moment, and most aren't even really earning any significant amount of money anyway. If you look at the global population, I think to save as many people as possible, Bitcoin can't move fast enough, because this sooner it becomes a store of value for institutional parties, for large corporations, the sooner people start making wages in Bitcoin. And I think it's all about distribution moments. So what we've seen from cycle to cycle are distribution moments where large chunks get sold off at all-time highs, and we're in one of those distribution moments right now. And many other systemic distribution moments will come, but I think that the main one is after all of the distribution shocks have occurred, and as they say, hyper-Bitcoinization has happened. The distribution becomes that of people really getting paid in Bitcoin. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on chain, of course, because it doesn't really scale that well. I think most people will just have payments in either Lightning or Liquid or a federated mint structure, and it doesn't matter that we need to use second layer options for payments. I think it's still beneficial. We can rely on chain for store of value, and payments can happen on different reels. And I also think that people are underestimating the innovative nature concerning with development and the capital being freed up by bull runs. So last bull run, we saw a lot of capital inflow going towards Lightning Network development. And I think if Bitcoin 10x's or 20x's from now, we're going to see an explosion of capital coming into that market and just creating solutions for every kind of problem that we've run into. If you look at who's working on federated mints right now, it's maybe 3 masterminds and a couple of developers worldwide are doing this or are known to do this. I may be wrong, but I don't see many people working on it right now. And I think in 5 years' time, that's going to be tens of thousands of developers working on that.
I think the technology will just, and this is what I always say in the podcast, and we have to acknowledge that we're still so early to it, and there's so much technology coming on top of Bitcoin. There's so much technology still developing that we don't even know what exactly will be the layer 2 solutions. As you said, we have Liquid, we have Fedimints, we have Lightning. Maybe there's something new coming up, and I'm always really bullish on the main layer. And then on top of that, we see where the money gets distributed, how we can develop the second layers. But before we get more into Bitcoin, I want to get one step back to privacy again. What would you recommend? Would you recommend to people getting into buying no KYC, into coin mixing, to improve their privacy? And what would you recommend people doing in general to improve their Bitcoin privacy?
I think there are many solutions to get KYC-free Bitcoin. I think the biggest problem is that a centralized party has collected your data once you buy KYC Bitcoin. And that way you become a target for the government, and possibly when the information is leaked, also organized crime. So I think understanding that as a risk is important, and you can combat this by simply moving and making your address obfuscated. There are tricks you can use so that you are not where the information says you are supposed to be, which makes it more difficult to find you. But yes, when orange pilling people, I usually tell them to start collecting no KYC Bitcoin, just because it's the most safe way to start. And privacy is in the Bitcoin ethos. I mean, it's mentioned in the white paper as one of the principles that we are to respect, that are important to Bitcoin.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's so important, and it's I'm well aware that I'm actually putting a little bit of a target on myself, because I'm publicly now known as a Bitcoiner, and I'm talking more and more about it, and I'm also growing in the, let's say, social awareness. I just got in the last month, and it probably will be way bigger when the podcast comes out, 1,000 new subscribers on YouTube. So there are like more and more people coming into the space. I'm just hoping that more and more podcasts are coming out, more and more people are coming up, so it's more distributed, and there are ways to try to set up an extremely secure Bitcoin setup. But of course, if you talk publicly about Bitcoin, it's a target on your back. That's definitely, I'm aware of that. I was getting aware on that after I was already public. That Bitcoiners teach me that. I was not as privacy focused and as before I was getting into Bitcoin, and I'm actually now getting into more and more how do I get it. But the guest before that was staying anonymous said to me, he's like, once you got your message out there that you are Bitcoiner public, it's almost impossible to get it back in. Like, even if I get now full, let's delete myself from the internet, you cannot delete yourself completely from the internet. Once you said it, you're basically out there. Obviously, it's better if you do it afterwards. But this is just my comments on privacy. Let's move to the Bitcoin. And I always like to start out with a big question, and a question that is like a little bit broader in the podcast. What does, and this, you can take it wherever you want to take this question, what does proof of work and Bitcoin mean for you?
Proof of work is the necessary component to combat centralization, and decentralized money is the thing that Bitcoin promises to be, and it can only be that through proof of work. So I think it's one of the essential components of Bitcoin, and it, because of the ambiguity of the word work, you can use it as an analogy also for how we act with each other. And I think that's also creating a beautiful ethos in Bitcoin of how we are incentivized to treat each other through the protocol, and how the protocol works and operates.
Yeah, it's also like so beautiful, because whenever we do a lot of stuff, I get the comments, like when I post, oh, I did today 3 this and that, I get the comments proof of work, and it kind of is that meme for hard work and for putting in the actual proof that you did something, and not just took a short term, like it's even a shortcut. It's even like more than just like Bitcoin. Of course, you need proof of work to get decentralization. It's to, as you said, it's defending the centralization. It's defending decentralization against the coming and growing decentralization. And what would you say is, like, when we zoom out in like 10, 20 years, how does how does the world look like if Bitcoin is successful? Like how would you say in 10, 20 years, oh, Bitcoin was successful? Would you say, oh, Bitcoin is successful in 10, 20, 50 years if fiat is not there anymore? Is Bitcoin successful even if fiat is still there, but Bitcoin is just at such high price and it's everywhere used and you can spend it everywhere? What would you say is Bitcoin success in like 20 years?
I think it will go faster than that, actually, but we can come back to that later. I think Bitcoin is successful as is it's adopted as a store of value, because it is happening right now. It is distributed as a store of value, and as soon it becomes the main store of value, then it also starts to eat up all stores of value. So right now we have lots of artificial stores of value, which don't actually represent human potential energy. And Bitcoin is the perfect representation of human potential energy. And it is, I think, from the moment that it is accepted as the main store of value of human potential energy worldwide, Bitcoin will have won its place. And what you'll see happen is that incentives take over. So the paradigm shift is the thing that's happening. People will start making different choices based on what kind of money they're using to transact. So that also means that it is more beneficial to actually respect each other and just trade instead of trying to take in whatever form is possible. And it will make unaffordable all kinds of policy that required money to enforce that wasn't there in the system. So a lot of things will change, and I'm looking forward mostly to the real cruelty in the world that isn't televised, and that is the poverty line for the global population. And when you look at Africa as a continent, so many countries are struggling to provide the necessity for a fruitful life for its citizens. And the people themselves have no power over their own situation. They have no ability to get out of this. And Bitcoin is going to change this. And I'm looking forward to them just leapfrogging all of those necessities and coming finally coming to a situation where they're able to build something for themselves and to become. Because Bitcoin just ends protectionism. Even though countries can still believe in their ideology of protectionism, it doesn't matter. Bitcoin doesn't care. So Bitcoin is just going to incentivize companies to go look for a workforce that is cheaper elsewhere. And if they don't, their competition will. So this incentive structure will make sure that people who are who can compete in the labor market will start to compete in the labor market. And it is the permissionless, jurisdictionless nature of Bitcoin that makes this possible. And I think that is inevitable if things just keep progressing the way they are. Then we're going to see a huge inflow of people from all over the world into labor markets, especially online labor markets. And I think that's the thing I'm looking forward most of all, because that brings capital into those countries so that they can actually afford the food that they need.
And you talked about protectionism. What is protectionism? What are you talking about? Governments' borders protecting their borders, or what do you mean with protectionism?
Yeah, protectionism is a form of interventionism that's a policy by a country, and it's by ideology, thinking that protecting the internal trade structures or the internal financial structures of a country is important, and you can do this by issuing policy. So monetary policy is a form of protectionism. Customs, protecting the borders against illegal streams of products coming into the country, protecting yourself thus from cheap Chinese labor, for example, but also patent structures. So intellectual property is a form of protectionism. There are countries that are already rebounding on this. They are, for example, in China, there's no real effective enforcement of patents. So you see factories produce products that are supposed to be copyright protected or trademark protected. And you can't, as a consumer, you can't even tell the difference between these products. So it's already happening. And I think this is just something that Bitcoin enhances, catalyzes, and we'll see real competition. And this is also something that I've learned from reading Human Action by Ludwig von Mises. You can create policy, but the policy doesn't stop the human action from happening. The human action is just adapting to the new situation where the policy isn't enforced. And whenever you create a policy that isn't enforced, you're actually not stopping any of the behavior of individuals, leading to collective choices.
That's some line, yeah. Wow. The thing that just came up in my mind, and it's like a small idea, in that people are getting really frustrated online if someone else copies their meme. And this is something, for example, I run the thing that no matter what I produce online, just take it. Like, do with it whatever you want. I cannot stop you anyways, and I don't care. And if you take my video, I'm in that, so you're making advertisement for me. So I'm okay with that. So on YouTube, there's a tool where you can see where your what channels do your videos use and what percentage of your videos are in there. And there's a high percentage of people that are just copying that and putting on their own channels. I'm thankful for that, because they're making advertisement for me. They're bringing my name and Bitcoin out there. But there are people that are really frustrated, and then also really even angry if someone takes his work and just distributes it as it would be their own. Is this also what you mean with protectionism will fall down more and more, because it's more about the idea, it's more about what the actual thing is, and not about who did it, the credits?
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with your stance on this. I think it is exactly like you say. If you want to get your message across, then that was your objective. And if other people start echoing your message without crediting you, you've still achieved your goal, which is to get the message out. Exactly. And for Bitcoin, it's really easy. We just want Bitcoin to be better known. We want to educate people, which is also in the white paper. One of the core principles mentioned in the white paper is to educate each other. And the ego has no place in education. We just need to bring the message across the best way we can, and that has nothing to do with any intellectual property, especially when it's about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is behaving like it's something that we can all use permissionlessly, and there's no ownership of Bitcoin, the network. There's only ownership of Satoshis.
Yeah, totally agreed. And this is also a reason why I have this speed there, because sometimes in my podcast, I talk about completely other stuff. Like I will release today a podcast about gene editing. He's also a Bitcoiner. I love him. But he's also talking about gene editing. He wrote a book about that, and he says how bad it is when we mess with our own genes and how detrimental that could be in our future, which has in theory nothing to do with Bitcoin. And I will release clips about that. But even if the clips are not about Bitcoin at all, there's still this P in my background and it still gets a message across. So it was important for me because some just have their own signs. I could also have a Robin Seyr sign in the background here. But why? It's my face anyway. So, and this is something, what I thought about when I designed the background, for me. I was like, I have to have a Bitcoin thing in there. Like I'm really, careful with what I spend money on. I film on my phone. I didn't even invest in a camera. And just yesterday, someone asked me, "Oh, what camera do you use?" Yeah, I use my phone. I just put it on a stand and go with it. Yeah. Like the phones today are as good as the good cameras 10 years ago. So like, why should we use a camera? And yeah, this is why I have this one on. But let's go back to the poverty line. I think it's really interesting what you said, and because a lot of people have the stance, Bitcoin is just money. It will not change a lot in the greater sphere, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that stand. And I think you also do, as you said, with the poverty line and how Bitcoin will change that. Maybe let's go into that. Like, how will Bitcoin change the world if it's just money? Because I hear that a lot. Oh, it's just money. How will it change anything?
Well, many things change. From a monetary policy point of view, you see that right now interest rates are determined for countries on loans that they have collected or loans that have been issued to those countries over the course of 80 years or something. For example, the Central African Republic of Congo is still paying for a loan that its dictator in 1962, Ubuntu, got, and the interest rate of that loan has been renegotiated every time the Central African Republic defaulted on it. And the problem with those interest rates is that they're higher than the potential growth of those countries. So if you have a negative real rate in a country, it is extremely difficult to get out of that. You need everybody to be as productive as they can to reach their highest potential to outgrow this negative real yield, to create a real yield. But you're competing with countries that have a positive real yield because of policy, because they have lower interest rates that are determined by the issuers of those loans. So right now we see a financial slavery structure that is just keeping the largest part of the world population under the thumb, and Bitcoin will simply change this, because those loans won't matter anymore. These people are going to be freed from those stupid loans. Not only is financial repression through inflation doing that right now, but hopefully they can shift to a different money standard and then get out of it. And so that's one way. And this is in consideration that we talk about all kinds of misery in the world, but the real misery is hunger, and this affects 100 million people every year, and the fatality rate from hunger is I think the main factor we need to combat, and I think Bitcoin is going for that. So this is, if you ask me what is the moral case for Bitcoin, I would say it is to solve world hunger, and it is by giving access to capital to people who don't reasonably have access to capital at this moment.
21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. It's amazing. Bitcoin, I think if you say someone that Bitcoin is have like Bitcoin will save world hunger, like Bitcoin will not save combat world hunger, they will call you crazy at first. But if you actually do the hard work and you research about Bitcoin and you know how it will impact the world, then all of a sudden it makes sense. The question that you also teased before, that you think it will go faster than the 10, 20 years I mentioned. How fast do you think this transition to a Bitcoin standard, to Bitcoin being the main store of value, can go?
So I read this book, When Money Dies, by Adam Ferguson, and it's really dry, and people like the book once they've completed it, but they absolutely hate reading it because it's so dry. But I plowed through it because I thought it was essential reading for me to learn about Bitcoin and to learn about the opposite of Bitcoin. And in this book, Adam Ferguson describes how the Papiermark in the Weimar Republic depreciated over a course of 6 years. And when you see the graph, and I'll send you the graph so you can add it in the show notes, you see that the currency basically from the onset of superinflation, which is inflation above 10%, has 5 years where it spirals out of control and hits the asymptote of complete devaluation, hyperinflation, complete hyperinflation. And I started to think about, and I heard Luke Romans once say in a podcast that every currency in the world has collapsed at some point, which kind of makes sense when you look at the history of monetary development. And so I decided to ask ChatGPT about this, how quickly, on average, a currency collapses from the onset of superinflation. And it gives you the answer 5 years. So some currencies go a bit quicker, as in 3 years, and some, like Japan, are 20 years in and not even close to collapsing. But it is not all the same for every currency, because Japan has a lot of US treasuries, has the US dollar to lean on, is a very productive country still, and is innovating to become even more productive, has a very, very tough work ethos. The people are extremely diligent, and they still have access to capital. I mean, there is plenty of investment, and this is also a side effect of their monetary policy, is that other countries can come in, and because the Japanese yen is so low, they can still invest in it. They can make better profits by investing in Japan's industrial innovation, development. But when you look at the current situation for the dollar doesn't have anything to lean on. So the onset of superinflation was 2021. And I'm not talking CPI. I'm talking the real inflation. And considering that the Papiermarkt in Germany was the calculation done for that was done with a different method of calculation than we use now for the CPI. I think if you keep messing with the denominator when calculating, then you're not really calculating anything, and you're not you're not doing any research. So the CPI is really it's a joke. If you consider what the real inflation must be, I don't think you can get an exact number, but you can get an estimation. And I think we've seen 2.5 years of peaks of hyperinflation above 20%, and peaks of superinflation, and then a moderate superinflation tendency over those years. And the central bank policy not being able to control this shows that we can only go up in inflation numbers. So comparing these numbers and seeing the empirical evidence of currencies collapsing within an average amount of 5 years, I think right now we are three years away from a total collapse of the dollar. And it's just my estimation based on these findings. And I think we're going into next year. We're going to see more peaks of hyperinflation, and the year after we're going to see even higher peaks of hyperinflation. And when you look at the graph in the from the book, you see also the percentual change of the gold price in Papiermarkt, and this you can just overlay with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the escape that gold was for the Germans at that time. And you see that the upswings are in the range of 20 to 80%, sometimes even 120%, and the down draws are never more than 20%. So you have plenty of down draws, because why these down draws happen is because liquidations happen. People sell large amounts of gold in one go. That collapses the gold price relative to the Papiermarkt at some moments in time. But overall, you see that even though it's highly volatile, the movement is exponential. So the average upswing is exponential, and this is what I think we'll see happen with Bitcoin also, especially because on a short term, gold scarcity nears absolute scarcity. On a longer term, it doesn't. And Bitcoin, because it is absolute scarcity, there's no reason to take into account that it is just scarce. It is absolutely scarce. So once there's no way to buy Bitcoin, in effect, the price is infinite. If it is not for sale for any currency, that means that the price is infinite. And this is what you see in this graph of Weimar Germany, where it is the hyperinflation nears an asymptote, where there's just no bid. Nobody wants the money anymore. It's completely worthless. And that's if when that happens to a currency, then the thing that actually has value, in the case of Weimar Germany, it's gold. In the case of the dollar now, it's Bitcoin. You'll see that the price is infinite. That doesn't mean that the value is infinite. The value is divided over all other value exchanged for it or exchangeable for it.
What do you think the value will be then for Bitcoin? Can you buy with one Bitcoin like 10 houses, or because then we cannot compare it to our usual right now unit of account with the US dollars, euro, whatever you use. So for imagining how big Bitcoin will be, I'm always trying to figure out like, how many houses can you buy for one Bitcoin? How many, what will one Bitcoin, and I think one Bitcoin will be massive to have, because when you think about the whole world going on this Bitcoin standard, and there's only 21 million, but really there are way less than 21 million, and how many people there are, how many millionaires there are, how many rich people there are that actually have a lot of money and can move into this. What do you think will be like a size comparison to one Bitcoin in this next 5-10 years you're talking about, or next 3-5 years you actually talked about?
I think it's very difficult to really assess a good exchange rate. I think it is the best way to look at Bitcoin's value overall by comparing house prices to Bitcoin for this example. But I think we're going to see a rough estimate would be dollar sat parity. So that is for today's dollars, Satoshis, and how quickly this is going to happen is impossible to say, but it denominated in dollars, Bitcoin is going obviously to infinity. So it's going to go through that number. But in buying power, in real buying power, I think dollar sat parity of today's dollars is a good estimate for where we can be in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and then the logical step, once you realize that, is to adopt the Bitcoin standard. And for me, Bitcoin standard means that you have only Bitcoin at this point in time. But I also acknowledge that there is life situations for different people. For example, if you are a dad of 3 kids and you have maybe even a company running, it's hard to be all in Bitcoin because you need operational money. You need to feed a family. And as you said, Bitcoin can be really volatile. So you don't want to be forced into selling some of your stack at a bear market low. So I'm always encouraging people to like have as much Bitcoin as they can possibly have in their financial situation. And this is like different to everyone. So it's not really like go all in because it's the best thing. I'm all in, but it's not the best way for everybody. But there's also more to it, to adopting a Bitcoin standard. Adopting a Bitcoin standard means also you have to take responsibility of your keys. You have to take responsibility and maybe even drive Bitcoin adoption to a certain extent. Try to figure out ways to spend Bitcoin and not spend dollars. Try to figure out ways to maybe even get paid in Bitcoin. I mean, this is going beyond the normal thing. How far would you say you personally are on a Bitcoin standard?
My income is from real estate, and I'm not in a position to sell all of that to buy Bitcoin with, because I have a family and need to take care of them. So that's a limit on my capability, and also because of the total finance aspect of this real estate deal, I have to receive it in euros, and I can later convert into Bitcoin whatever I think is wise, but I can't receive in Bitcoin at the moment because I'm not sure enough how I end up at the end of the year. But yeah, I would say I have very little liquidity in anything but Bitcoin. So every thing I would normally have saved in euros, I'm immediately converting to Bitcoin, and I think this is the way forward for me. And I don't advise people to do this. I tend to be more conservative when advising people. I just tell them at least to get some, and usually I convince them by saying there's a cost of opportunity and an asymmetry in what Bitcoin is doing, and if you don't play, you lose.
There is a massive actually cost of opportunity, and I think this is a really good approach because what we are talking about and this big ideas and where Bitcoin is going, I think it can scare people off if they don't have any Bitcoin knowledge or little to no Bitcoin knowledge. Some Bitcoin knowledge everybody has, but most of that is coming from reading headlines. So I'm always also trying to convince them, like, get something, even if you can afford like 100 euros of Bitcoin, get it and see where it goes, and then educate yourself in Bitcoin, use Bitcoin, try to get it from exchange to a hardware wallet, like just play around with it, get comfortable with it. And once you have it, and once you are comfortable with it, once you got educated on it, with books, with podcasts, with whatever, then you can move further in that. What's interesting for me is also then we have a euro dollar collapsing, but then there's something new coming up, which is not really new in my opinion, but people say it's new. It's CBDCs. For me, CBDCs are a little bit like Blu-ray. The new the better technology is actually coming right around the corner, and Blu-ray is this thing. Finance experts are now saying, "Oh, it's great." What do you see? What impact do you see CBDCs having in the adoption of Bitcoin?
I think your Blu-ray example is really funny. Yeah, I think CBDCs are making it themselves irrelevant, because people will value more an appreciating buying power, and they're going to see people lead by example that are in Bitcoin, parallel to this CBDC system. And I think we're going to see the digital euro in Europe, because the ECB is just adamant about developing it. I think they even have a date for it to start issuing. I thought it was late 26 or a year later. But if you go to the website of the ECB, they are really enthusiastic about it. I think it just shows that they are not willing to do any of the work, and they're dismissing arguments by people who have written extensively about this. You can't create a money out of thin air. You cannot. What we have with the euro right now is based on confidence. This confidence is already there before they went off of any standard. And if you issue a new coin, then you can't expect that to hold value over time, because it's entirely new. People won't appreciate it for any of its properties if it's not linked to an underlying asset. People are just not that stupid, I think. And so at the same time, Bitcoin is going to be parallel to that, and it's just going to show that it does have the value propositions correct, and we can see this play out in real time in Nigeria. They have the naira, which is being replaced by the e-naira, and I think this is a pilot by other central banks being for influencing Nigeria to do this as a experiment. But I don't know. But you see that the tendency of the population is not to use the e-naira and to use cash instead. And people are stubborn, and I think especially when you look at merchants make up the local economy. Merchants aren't going to accept a digital euro in Europe just because the central bank says that's the money. They are always considering different payment methods. They always have reason to. And now, for example, the cash is becoming more popular again, simply because they are trying to cope, and cash makes your bookkeeping a little bit more easy as a merchant. So you have a little bit more flexibility of what you actually pay in taxes. Which may be fraud, but you can't stop people from trying to cope. This is simply not enforceable, and that's a problem that a CBDC has. In the end, you create a policy that you coerce onto people, but the reaction is human action. So people will still make individual choices based on their own situation, and they're going to choose what's best for them, not what's best for the digital naira or the digital euro or the central bank. No, they're just going to make their own choices, and I think we will see it immediately when they start to issue these CBDCs. So I mean, they can force an account on me, but I'm never going to spend any digital euro. I'm never going to do it because it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I think I looked it up while you were speaking. It's actually late 2026, as you said, that they start issuing it. And I think with every government project, it might be late. It might be later than that. Let's see. And I don't know. I never saw a successful technical solution from any government. I see, like, it's now possible in Austria to like found a company online and stuff like that. And I tried this out, and it's horrible. It's you have to go to the physical government offices so many times because stuff is not working out. It's like, it's so shit. So I'm looking forward to the technical solutions and the technical problems they are having, and how far ahead Bitcoin will be in that adoption curve, because it's already so good. And think just like 3 years out, how far further Bitcoin payments and Bitcoin apps and wallets and usability and user-friendly apps will be, because so much money will come in the space. It will be, everybody's like, why should I use that digital euro? It has maybe spending limits. It has this and that, and it has all the problems of the old world, and none of the advantages of Bitcoin. It's really shit. But yeah, I don't know. There's also this thing, like they can like. Did you saw the thing with the world coin? How many people lined up for that thing? Like they can have crazy incentives maybe that people get into that. I don't know. Like there was some countries giving up free burgers for vaccinations, and it's like people actually took on this thing, and I don't know. I don't know how they will implement it and giving incentives for people to get it, but it will be interesting to see.
I think you can always negotiate with consumers and find ways to convince them without real coercive. You would be coercing, but you're only coercing them through false incentives and false motivation. But I think you can't do this with merchants. Merchants are a different kind of people, and they make up a smaller percentage of the world, of the population, and these people are looking for profit, and you can't convince them to start using a new accounting method just because someone says you should. They are going to look for the why, and they're going to find out with the CBDC that the why is actually really horrible. And I don't think that's. I think by that fact alone, CBDCs are doomed to fail from the start.
I also think that CBDCs could be kind of a Trojan horse for mainstream for Bitcoin, because then governments say, oh, this digital thing, this digital wallet has value, and it gets more and more approved in society, with the government saying this digital wallet, this digital thing has value. Then people are like, but what is with Bitcoin? Because my digital euro loses in value, and all of a sudden this digital Bitcoin wins in value. So I don't know how this will all play out. There are a lot of interesting theories around that. But in the end of the day, no matter what impact CBDCs has on Bitcoin will win long term. I think this is the important message to take, and I think it's in such an amazing time to be alive right now. It's such an interesting thing. Like so many interesting things are happening, and yeah, that's why I have this podcast. I have 300 people per year on. So I want to have 300 Bitcoiners on this year, and exactly because of that reason. Because I want to document, I want to speak with everyone. It's like having a podcast in 1995 and seeing the internet growing. This would be amazing to have, and I want to just do this for Bitcoin. Yeah, perfect. We're coming slowly to the end of the podcast, and I was curious, and I'm always curious about those kind of questions. What is your most controversial Bitcoin take? What would you say is your take on Bitcoin? That, or not even on Bitcoin, it can be on other stuff. But what would be the take that most Bitcoiners would disagree with?
What I hear a lot of Bitcoiners say is that Bitcoin doesn't scale and that there's no solution for it. And my thoughts are contrary to that. I think that's a Malthusian argument. I think Bitcoin scales because people simply don't understand the amount of money that's going to come into Bitcoin. Bitcoin will pay for itself. Bitcoin development will pay for itself just by the accruing of value of Bitcoin. There are Bitcoiners who become so filthily rich, and they, of course, are incentivized to use that capital, that new capital that they didn't have before, and now is almost like water to them. And they are going to spend it on Bitcoin development. And I think this is gravely underestimated. And you'll see, just like you described before, you'll see development of wallets in such a way that people don't even notice they're using Bitcoin, and that it's different from anything else. The only thing they will notice is that when they use these units, they're going to be better off, and especially when looking at each other through role modeling or leading by example, people are going to show that using Bitcoin to transact is going to be the best way.
Definitely. It will be so obvious in hindsight, and it's fun to watch right now, the whole adoption growing. Where we have an end routine where the previous guest asks a question without knowing who is the next guest, and your question from the previous guest is, where do you, and we kind of talked about it today extensively actually, but I still want to ask the question, and maybe you have like a different thing you want to add on that. Where do you see Bitcoin in 10 years?
I think in 10 years, Bitcoin is going to be the main store of value of the world, and it's going to be the main unit of account for all international trade. And simply because of its trustless nature.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think this is the perfect way to end the podcast, and the perfect ending point to make a point here. Lau, it was a pleasure for me to have you. It was really, really cool to talk with you. You have a really interesting thoughts and ideas for Bitcoin. I also think that your timeline with like 3 years to this kind of a Bitcoin adoption as you described it is really interesting to see, and I have to think more about it, because I always was like, it will take more time, but it could be really fast, as you said it, with the average time of currencies collapsing with hyperinflation. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being on. For people that now want to like ask you questions, for people that want to reach out to you, where can they reach you the best? Where can they ask you questions?
I'm on Noster. You can find me. It doesn't work with a handle, but I can send you my npub for the show notes so that people can find me. So I work for Noster Report, and you can find me through there also. I'm also on Twitter, but that's mainly because I needed an account to join Spaces. And my handle is @Lau Noster Report.
Perfect. Then thank you, Lau, and I'm looking forward to a future conversation.
Me too. Thank you too, Robin.